The storm's embrace. The rain poured relentlessly outside, the thunder rumbling like an angry beast in the distance. I sat alone in my dimly lit living room, surrounded by the eerie silence that accompanied the storm. It was just me and the storm, a deadly dance of nature's wrath. Little did I know that this night of solitude would soon turn into a terrifying nightmare. As the hours ticked by, my mind became consumed by a creeping unease. Every creak and groan of the old house seemed amplified by the storm. I tried to distract myself with a book, but the words blurred before my eyes, unable to hold my attention. The incessant tapping of the rain on the window pane only intensified my growing sense of dread. Suddenly, a deafening crash echoed from upstairs, causing me to jump out of my seat. Heart pounding, I cautiously ascended the creaky staircase, each step filled with trepidation. The flickering hallway light cast eerie shadows on the walls, distorting familiar objects into grotesque figures. I called out, but my voice seemed swallowed by the darkness. As I entered my bedroom, I froze in horror. The room had been transformed into a scene of chaos. Furniture was upturned, clothes scattered across the floor, and the mirror shattered into countless shards. I stumbled backward, unable to comprehend what had transpired. How could this have happened? A chill crept up my spine, and a primal instinct urged me to flee. But where could I go? I was alone, trapped within the confines of my own home. Panic gripped me as I realized that there was no escape from the horror that lurked within these walls. Desperate for answers, I ventured into the attic, a place I had rarely visited. The ladder creaked under my weight as I ascended into the unknown. The attic was an abyss of forgotten memories and discarded possessions. Dust-covered boxes lined the walls, their contents lost to time. I hesitated, unsure of what I hoped to find. But as I reached out to open the nearest box, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the lone candle that provided me with a feeble light source. Darkness enveloped the attic, and I could feel unseen eyes watching me, taunting me. A whimper escaped my trembling lips as I fumbled blindly for the exit. But the attic seemed to shift and twist, its dimensions warping in the blackness. Panic consumed me as I stumbled and fell, disoriented and disbalanced. Something cold and clammy slithered across my hand, and I let out a blood-curdling scream. The storm outside intensified, the rain pounding against the roof like a relentless drumbeat. The sound became a symphony of terror, drowning out my cries for help. I was alone, engulfed in darkness, with something sinister lurking just out of sight. I crawled toward the faint outline of the attic door, clawing my way to freedom. As I burst out of the attic, gasping for air, the house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The storm raged on, but I no longer felt its oppressive weight. I stumbled through the house, a mere shell of my former self. The once familiar rooms were now foreign, twisted nightmares. Shadows whispered from the corners, and the air reeked of malevolence. But I couldn't stay in that house any longer. I had to leave. As I stepped outside, rain soaked my skin, mixing with tears of fear and relief. I glanced back at the house, its windows leering at me, as if mocking my escape. I vowed never to return, to leave the darkness behind. The haunting melody. The old Victorian house stood atop the hill, shrouded in mystery and surrounded by an air of foreboding. Its dark windows stared out like hollow eyes, and the overgrown ivy clung to the decaying walls. Despite its eerie appearance, I was drawn to the house, unable to resist the allure of its haunted history. One summer, I found myself alone in the house-sitting for a distant relative. The moment I stepped inside, a chill gripped my bones, and an unsettling silence settled upon the rooms. The air was heavy with the weight of forgotten whispers and unfinished stories. Night fell, and as the moonlight filtered through the windows, casting eerie shadows, I heard it, a soft, haunting melody. It was as if the music emanated from within the walls themselves, pulling at my very soul. Mesmerized, I followed the sound, my curiosity outweighing my trepidation. The melody led me to a hidden room on the top floor, concealed behind a tapestry. The door creaked open, revealing a chamber frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture stood motionless, as if awaiting the return of occupants long gone. And in the center of the room stood a grand piano, its keys calling out to be played. Compelled by an invisible force, I approached the piano. I hesitantly pressed a key, and a resounding note filled the room, joining the ghostly melody. As my fingers danced across the keys, the music consumed me, transporting me to a forgotten era. But with each note, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Shadows danced along the walls, morphing into spectral figures. Their ethereal forms twisted and contorted with each melancholic chord, their hollow eyes fixed upon me. The music had awakened something ancient, something hungry for the living. Fear gripped my heart and I tried to halt the melody, but my hands refused to obey. The keys played of their own accord, faster and more frenzied. The room became a cacophony of sound and terror, drowning out my desperate cries for release. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the music ceased. Silence enveloped the room, broken only by my ragged breaths. The spectral figures faded back into the darkness, leaving me shaken and trembling. I fled the room, stumbling down the stairs, desperate to escape the clutches of the haunted melody. But the house seemed to conspire against me. The walls groaned, the floorboards shifted, and the exit became an elusive mirage. Panic consumed me as I became trapped in a labyrinth of the supernatural. Days turned into nights, and each night the haunting melody echoed through the halls. Sleep eluded me as the haunting notes invaded my dreams, driving me to the edge of sanity. I was a prisoner in the house's grip, an instrument of its spectral symphony. But then, as I sat on the edge of despair, an idea struck me, a desperate gambit for freedom. I returned to the hidden room, my fingers trembling as I touched the piano keys one final time. This time I played a counter melody, a composition of my own creation. As the notes rang out, a powerful surge of energy filled the room. The walls shook, and the spectral figures writhed in agony. The house fought against the defiant melody, its very foundation trembling. With one last resounding chord, the music reached its climax, shattering the ethereal grip on the house. The specters dissipated into thin air, and the house fell silent once more. Exhausted but victorious, I stepped out of the house, never to return.